Once you're happy with your configuration, you can click on this button to save it and access it later. Configuration has been saved. Let's try to load it back. We can find it over here. Now that we've got the desired configuration in the software, we can start assembling the bench. First thing we have to do is to place the cross members on the bench. First, we're going to place the two front cross members on the front edge of the bench. Next, we are going to place the rear cross member at number 25 on the bench, as highlighted here in the software, or here in the drawing. Note that we are using a regular cross member instead of the rear cross member because we will be adding more jig to this configuration in a following video. Let's now assemble the jigs. We usually build the jigs in order, starting in the front and ending in the rear. We'll start with point number 11 and assemble it from bottom to top. First thing, we have to spot its location on the bench. It will go at position 8 in length and -4 in width, as indicated in the jig window. You can find these positions here in the 3D view, 8 -4, and here in the drawing, 8 -4. In this position, we place a sliding block type L to go on the left side of the bench, with the arrow pointing forward. We tighten it down. We input the values in the sliders. For the length slider in yellow, we input 66 mm, and for the width slider in green, 62 mm. We tighten it down. Repeat this process for all other jigs. On top of the sliding block, we place tower MZ260, facing toward the rear of the bench, as indicated in the 3D view by this yellow notch, or in the drawing by this triangle. Bolt down the tower. We recommend to leave the bolts a bit loose, so it's easier to fit the jig inside the hole when lowering the car on the bench. And we do the same for the remaining jigs. Next, we are going to assemble the piston, plate, height adapter and socket. We'll be using a piston P160. On top of it, we bolt a plate UP004. On the plate, we screw a height adapter AD05. On top of the height adapter, we screw a socket UV13 with a height offset of 1.9 mm. that you adjust using this ruler. We will also need an HM screw of diameter 12 and pitch 150, along with a screw stopper VB12.150. We can now place the piston inside the tower, following the orientation you see in the 3D view or in the drawing. For this jig, we will select the pin in the second hole from the top in the tower, as indicated by this -2 after the tower name, and in the hole D in the piston, as indicated by the -D after the piston name. We can now repeat the same process for all of the pistons. And finally, we are ready to bench the car. To facilitate fitting the jigs in the hole when lowering the car, we recommend using only 4 jigs and taking out the pins of the remaining jigs. We will slide them up later into the holes. Among our 4 initial jigs, you can already attach loosely to the car the one with UV socket before lowering it onto the bench. We can now lower the car until it's hovering just above the jigs. Adjust the bench so the jigs are in front of the holes. Continue lowering the car just enough so you can tighten the bolt of the jigs and the towers. Tighten the bolts of these 4 towers. Finish lowering the car and let it rest completely on those 4 jigs. Then slide up the pistons of the remaining jigs, fit the socket into the holes, and secure them with the pins. For this jig, we have an example where the screw doesn't fit into the hole because the car has been damaged. In a following video, we'll show you what to do when you encounter this situation and how you can use your Cameleon kit as a measurement system in order to assess the damage. We had an overview of the Cameleon software, and we saw how to bench a car on vertical jigs. You should now understand the basics of how to use the Cameleon kit and the Cameleon software. Cameleon Complete Tutorial video number 3, Angle Jig Setup. In this video, we will show you how to build 2 kinds of horizontal jig, double horizontal jig with the FB2 plate, single horizontal jig with the FB1 plate, and 2 kinds of jigs at an angle, using rotatory body and axe 60, or cube 60 and ANC 90. First thing, let's head to Cameleon. And the car we used last time is already loaded with the configuration we saved. Let's go to the points window to add some angle jigs. First, let's add a FB2 double jig in the front. So this jig will cover points number 3 and number 1 in the front longitudinal member. So we can toggle either one of those, 1 or 3. And we have the jig appearing here, ready to use for the 2 points. If the jig only shows with 1 point, you can click on this button, toggle double jig, to show the second point. In this tower configuration, we might have some trouble to put the screw in, because it will hit on the piston. So we recommend to change the body type for this tower, and use a body A instead of a body B. So now we have clearance to put the 2 screws in the holes. Next, we will add another horizontal jig in the back, but this one in the single form, not in the double. So let's toggle point number 51. And you can see it appearing here. In the current configuration, the car might have some flex in the rear. So in order to use point 51 accurately, we need to add more vertical jigs to support the rear of the car. Angle jigs are not meant to be fixation points, only vertical jigs are. Let's go ahead and add points 45 and 46 to the configuration. And now the car is properly supported in the front and in the rear. Next, we will add 2 points at an angle. We'll add point number 30. By default, this point loads with a rotatory body and axis 60. But for this point, we will switch for a ANC 90 to have an example of a jig with a cube and ANC 90. The software gives us a configuration with a TV plate, but I think we can find a configuration without. So let's try to play around and get rid of it. If we move the sliding block, now we have a simpler configuration without the TV plate. Let's add a second point on this cross member. Toggle point 29. For this jig, we will keep the rotatory body and axis 60. We now have a configuration with every kind of angle jigs. So let's start assembling it.